Welcome to Diversity Discourse, the official podcast of Minority Business Entrepreneur Magazine. This is the space where we create meaningful conversations around supplier diversity, diverse business entrepreneurship, and diversity, equity, and inclusion with some of the industry's most engaging and successful entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and experts. Now, let's get started with today's episode.
In today's episode, how to command leadership presence without being the loudest in the room. Leadership coach Salvatore Manzi reveals the game-changing techniques behind confident communication, grounded presence, and how introverts and underestimated leaders can show up with authority in every room they enter. Now here's Salvatore.
I am, as a communication coach, I help leaders find their voice and then find their it factor so that they can communicate, own the spotlight, basically connect their message with their listeners so that they can create the impact that they want. And it all started way back when. We'll go back to my early days. My father was a public speaker, and he would come home so energized from every one of his talks. I was like, I want to figure this out. I want to do it too. And when I got up on the stages, my own internal imposter syndrome, my own internal I don't belong here, really kept me from being able to show up fully. So I dug in. I was like, okay, what is it? Is it just the fear of public speaking? No, it's way beyond that. Conditioning that as a gay man, I don't belong to be in the spotlight. I don't belong to be have a voice in this room. And I wanted to overcome that. So I developed strategies and techniques to help leaders wrestle with and navigate all of those feelings that make us feel that we're not necessarily, we don't have a seat at the table, we don't have a voice in this room, to show up with presence. And what I learned is that presence can be taught. It's overcoming our own conditioning and our own programming. And it can be using strategies. We can slowly begin to show up and own the spaces where we're inhabiting. And yes, the loudest in the room is going to get attention for a moment. The most entertaining and most charming and charismatic are going to get the attention for a moment. But after that moment, people look for substance, right? They want something more than just bombastic loudness and all that. Presence is when you can be comfortable being authentic. I say it's where authenticity and comfort come together. That's where presence lives. And presence is very hard to define. Everybody would define it a different way. If you look at a person that you think has presence, you're going to identify things about that person, things they're doing, or things they're saying, or things the way they're inhabiting the space. Those are going to be ideas. But for me, presence is where I can be fully myself, bring my full message forward in a situation from a place of comfort. That doesn't mean I'm not going to be a little bit nervous and anxious, because that's going to be real, but I'm going to be able to deliver and show up. That's presence. I am self-identified as an introvert as well. And for the last 20 years, I've been working with data-driven leaders that are typically introverted, whether they're analysts, scientists, or they're financial advisors. They're working with numbers, more comfortable with the data than they are with interactions necessarily. One thing that introverts can do is to own their strengths. As an introvert, we think before we speak. There's a both and here, right? Because there's a thinking too long before we respond, and people start to think that, the porch light's on and nobody's there due to the delay bias. But there's the gold of having, when we do speak, we're adding real value. We're making a thoughtful contribution. We're not just being entertaining and charismatic. To your point, like, most communication training is geared towards extroverts. geared towards polishing what is already there in the form of charisma. In my book, I go into a dozen strategies for how introverts can own their own strengths to show up with presence and without having to fake charm or charisma or be entertaining. The idea is to be 100% ourselves and to let the space make space for us, claiming our space. Helping people pitch their business to investors is one of my wheelhouse. I started my practice in the Bay Area and worked with a lot of founders, worked with Y Combinators, worked with founders as they're going through first and second round funding. And there is an art to pitching yourself and your business to investors and potential investors. I'd love to unpack that. But before we get to that, let's talk about presence. Presence is a couple of things. Number one, I would offer that we have a continuum between agency and relational behaviors. High agency would be the sovereign. That's where we're looking out over our queen or kingdom, and we're in full agency. We have full agency over ourselves. Those are those behaviors. To the other side is the jester, the sort of levity, the make everybody feel comfortable, make space for everybody else. This continuum of behaviors we all have access to. And we are conditioned by society how we're supposed to behave in situations. We all know how to behave if we get pulled over by a police officer, right? We know the behaviors that we're meant to adopt and show. So that conditioning, especially those of us from minority or targeted groups, that conditioning is counterproductive to certain contexts where we need to show up. If I need to show up and pitch my business, I can't go in high relational. I need to go in more high agency. And so it's a matter of fake it till you make it, leading with a part of ourselves that maybe feels a little less familiar so that we can demonstrate agency and presence. Now, let's talk about what those actually look like. The behaviors, it all comes down to three things: space, silence, stillness. Space, silence, stillness. Those are the three categories that we're going to work with when we're looking at the continuum from agency to relational. Now, on a high agency, I am taking up a lot of space. My elbows are out. My elbows are away from when I'm talking, I'm gesturing with my elbows away from my body. My shoulders are back and down. My head is up. My chest is kind of puffed up. I'm sitting up, right? Or I'm standing. I've spread my stuff out on the table in front of me. I am spread out. High agency takes up a lot of space. High relational is going to make themselves small, going to cuddle in, going to make more room for you, going to tilt. I'm gonna close in on myself, cross my arms. I'm gonna keep all my stuff nice and compact and tight. High relational is how most of us are conditioned to behave. This is how we show respect. I'm gonna give lots of space to you. No, if you want to go in and pitch your services and raise money, you need to take up space. Show them that you belong. And it feels counterintuitive in the body. But once you start taking up more space, spread yourself out, then physiologically starts the loop where you will start to feel like you can have agency in that space. So that's space. Second is silence. There's a funny thing about leaders, high agency leaders. They're very comfortable with silence. They're comfortable with the discomfort that is created when there's a lot of silence in the room, in the negotiation, in the conversation. It's often said that in sales tactics, the person who speaks first is the one who's going to lose, right? A person in high agency is going to be comfortable with silence. Here's the technique I'm going to offer to anyone listening, and that is master the pause. And I don't want you to pause at the period and comma. People expect that. People will jump in and they will be like, oh, fine, this is great. This is my opportunity to talk. Master the pause in places that don't necessarily feel like they need a pause, the anticipatory pause. That's when you master the silence. And last is stillness. A person of high agency is not going to move around a lot. They're going to use graceful gestures, intentional gestures. They're going to move around a little slower than anybody else in the room. It's been said if you just move 5% slower than everybody else in the room, you're going to have the appearance of greater confidence. So you could look at the other side, relational. You want to like move around a lot, make the person feel comfortable, keep your gestures going, use a lot of hand gestures, especially around your face. That's going to help them feel more comfortable because you're lowering your status necessarily. So that is a big download, but space, silence, and stillness are the measures of agency to relational. And if you can embody taking up space, owning the silence, and using more intentional and slower gestures, you're going to appear with higher agency and more presence. Try one thing a day. Like today, for the rest of the day, see what you can do to take up more space in every environment that you are in. Just see what it feels like to take. Notice what your body does. Notice what your intuition is. Notice how you want to resist or embrace that space. Take up as much space as possible today, just to see what it feels like. Tomorrow, own the silence. Deliberately, intentionally, in low stakes situations. When you go order your coffee at Starbucks, I'd say, I would like to have a tall mochaccino. Helps the silence in those low stakes situations so that you can practice. Feel it in your body. Feel what it feels like to go outside of your comfort zone and have that silence. And third, the next day, practice intentional gestures and just tell yourself you're going to move 5% slower than everybody else in the room. You're going to appear to have greater composure for no reason whatsoever. Notice what happens internally and notice what feels uncomfortable and see how much you can embrace it. Every culture holds different aspects and behaviors up as a greater is showing more leadership and more presence. So it's difficult to categorize all of them, but you can talk about high context and low context cultures as a differentiator. High context cultures are when they assume that you understand the context and they just communicate in vagueness. Like, oh, you want to make spaghetti? You boil water, you throw the spaghetti in there, and then you're done. Low context cultures like America, we like everything spelled out. All the details have to be spelled out. You take 4 cups of water, bring it to a boil. You take 1 inch circumference of spaghetti, put it into the pot, boil for 7 minutes, drain, rinse under cold water. Right? We low context. We go into a lot of details. You can kind of divide up the world into high context, low context, in the sense that high context cultures is assuming that you already know. And in high context cultures, there's not as much of an interruption. There's not as much of a raise your hand. There's not as much of a overt engagement between speaker and audience. Low context, we interrupt, we raise our hand, like we'll talk of that. So if you are navigating different cultures, be mindful of how they operate. If you're in Japan, they're not going to raise their hand. They're going to give a slight adjustment to their face or their eye to let you know that they have a question or a thought. You have to retune yourself to watch different cues as you're in interacting with people. It is full of strategies and techniques to help leaders elevate their communication, whether for their teams or whether you're just getting your message out there. And I would welcome anybody to go to clearandcompellingplaybook.com. That's clearandcompellingplaybook.com. And you can sign up for the release. It's going to be in September. And you'll also get a whole resource library of contents that you can start working with, frameworks, techniques, all of those.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Diversity Discourse, the official podcast of Minority Business Entrepreneur Magazine. We hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to subscribe so that we can join you again. For more tips and notes from the show, check us out at mbemag.com. And to find out which guests and topics we'll be discussing next, sign up for our newsletter at mbemag.com/pulse. That's mbemag.com/PULSE. We'll talk to you next time.